If you were to ask me what piece of equipment inside your computer is most likely to die, it's going to be your power supply. Power supplies are robust, but they take a lot of abuse from bad electricity. And as a result of that, when I have a problem on a system, one of the first things I'm going to be looking at from a hardware standpoint is the power supply. Now, power supplies die in one of two ways. Either they're going to die catastrophically or they're going to die slow. Catastrophic death is pretty obvious. In this situation, you're going to have absolutely no power on the system whatsoever. You're trying to hit the power button, nothing's coming on, there's no lights, no fans are turning. I mean, it is DEAD, dead. Now, it could get a lot more catastrophic than that. For example, if you start to hear a big audible pop and smoke starts coming out of your power supply and you get that awful burning smell, well, you've probably just blown up your power supply, and as a result of that, the right fix is simply to replace it. Now, for the A+ exam, they talk about you should always unplug your power supply when it makes smoke and burning smell. Well, yeah, you should unplug it. The idea is that they're telling you to do this to get it away from the electricity, but in the real world, if you have a power supply go that bad, in all probability, you've already tripped the breaker and you don't really have to worry about unplugging it on a timely basis. But for the test, we'll say that. The other thing is, on a bad catastrophic error like that, 9 times out of 10, you've already destroyed the motherboard as well. But just be aware of that. Okay. Catastrophic's easy. It's not pretty, but it's easy. The harder thing to predict is when a power supply dies slowly. Now, to do a power supply test, we have to actually go and use, well, there's a lot of different ways to do it. What I want to start off with is I'm just going to use a good old voltmeter here. Okay, so we're going to use this voltmeter to test the system. So let me go ahead and get it started. Now, first of all, if you look on the voltmeter, you see I've set the range to 25 volts DC. The biggest voltage you're going to get on a power supply is 12 volts. So you always pick the highest range that's as close to the voltage as you can, but above it. So if I was doing 26 volts, I would set this up to the next one. But here I'm doing 12 volts, 10 volts is too low, 25 is the next one I can do. So I'm going to grab a Molex connector. Really all I need is something with a black ground and something with a yellow wire. You can test any of the voltages, but testing on the 12 volt is always the best because it's the biggest voltage and it's subject to the greatest amount of change. Now, of course, I have to get really used to reading these analog voltmeters, which I'm pretty good at, and I can sit there and see that it's putting out just a smidge above 12 volts. That's actually pretty common. This is a fairly new power supply. Most power supplies, when they come from the factory, will actually generate a little bit more than the rated voltage. The reason is when power supplies die slowly, the big clue is that the voltage drops and drops and drops and drops. Once the voltage hits around 11 volts, your motherboard's not going to be able to power up anymore, and as a result of that, you're going to have to replace the power supply. But this will at least confirm that it's the power supply that's the actual problem itself. Now, you can go through and test everything like that, but there's another really cool thing you can do using this very impressive tool right here. Yep, it's a paper clip. Now, usually when you're testing a power supply, you need to keep it under some kind of load. So the best thing is always to plug it into a motherboard. But this is actually a cute little trick you can do real fast if you just want to start up a power supply. Let me get the switch going. Okay. You see that little green wire right there? That's the power good wire. So to start this system without having a motherboard or anything else like that, I can put into the power good, and then I can put it into any black ground, and I can start the system. You don't want to do this for very long, but now I could come in, use my voltmeter, and test voltages all day long. So that's one little fun trick. But if you really want to do it right, you need to use something like this. This is a voltage tester. Now, voltage testers are inexpensive, they do a good job, they put a little load on the system, and they're a good, quick and dirty way to be able to test your system. So just plug in anything. Usually I always plug in the P1. I got a little green light, so I know it's getting ready to go. And I hit the button. and I get all these nice little green little idiot lights that are telling me I have good voltage. The only downside to a tester like this is I don't know what the limitations are. Will it give a green light when I have 11.5 volts? Or will it give a green light when I have 11 volts? I'm really not sure. So they are kind of idiot lights, but in general, these are good tools for a quick and dirty. By the way, the other thing that happens on power supplies sometimes is one individual connector might go bad. And in that case, if I want to, I can actually test any one little connector to see if it might have any problems. So these are pretty handy little guys. So it's actually fun working with power supplies. You get to use voltmeters and testing tools and paper clips and all that fun. But I got to tell you, the number one problem we have with power supplies is that people forget to provide power to whatever it is they're trying to make go. So if your power supply isn't working, one of the first things you're going to have to verify is it plugged in? Is the wall outlet you've plugged it into providing power? Has somebody flipped the on-off switch on the back of the power supply? Has somebody messed with that little dual voltage connector on the back? Have you plugged in whatever device that you're trying to power? For example, if it's a motherboard, are all the power connectors properly inserted? I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten the little auxiliary connector on a motherboard. So the bottom line is when you're trying to find a problem on a power supply, it's great to understand all these tools. They're on the A+, but understand, most of the time, it's something pretty simple.